Welcome to memoQ Talks, where we talk to industry leaders about their experiences, lessons learned, and what works best across all areas of localization. Now here's your host.
Hey Dylan, how are you?
G'day Mark, good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, where is here for you?
Currently we are in Brisbane, in the sunny Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. So it is in the middle of winter here. We're looking at a nice 16 degrees at 9 o'clock in the morning, 16 degrees Celsius. You'd have to work that out into Fahrenheit yourself.
No, it sounds like low to mid 70s, which sounds like summertime here in Seattle. So
it's chilly, yeah, it's chilly, but not too bad. I was in London a week or so ago, and it was colder in London's summer than it is in our winter. So
yeah, well, you're not going to get any sympathy from the Londoners or from anybody from Seattle. So, 16 degrees Celsius sounds ideal. Hey, man, you've been putting on a lot of miles this last year or so, because I think we met originally in Portland. Then a few weeks later or a month later, you were down at LocWorld in San Jose. I know that you've been over to Europe at a couple different things. I think you've had another trip to the US, and now you're back in Australia. And actually traveling almost anywhere from Australia it's a long flight, right?
Yeah. We started off going to Portland, then returned to Brisbane, we went to Zurich for the SlaterCon event there,
right.
Stopped in at London on the way, then went to, San Jose for the LocWorld event, came back here. It was funny. We were exhibiting at LocWorld, and each of the exhibitors had to have some kind of raffle prize for all of the attendants. What we had brought with us was a blow-up kangaroo. You may or may not remember that.
Yeah, I went a few rounds with that kangaroo. Yeah, the kickboxing kangaroo.
and look at this. I've even got a.
Yeah, that's it. That's the guy.
That was the picture from the multi-link. And the organizers of LocWorld before the raffle prize came up and said to me, "Oh, Dylan, we're a little bit concerned. You know, there was a minimum value of $100 for these prizes." And I said to her, "Do you realize that this little kangaroo was made in China? It was transported to Australia. We took it to Zurich. It flew to London, then to San Francisco, and it drove all the way to San Jose. The carbon footprint of this little kangaroo is in the thousands." And she said, "You got it, man." So, yes, it's incredible.
Aside from being a CEO, you're also a salesperson. I like that, man.
Yeah.
Hey,
yes.
I want to talk to you about AcudocX, what it is, what you guys are doing, how it started and all that. But before I do that, I do want to congratulate you, because you made it to the final round for the Process Innovation Challenge at LocWorld in Dublin, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
So we prepared a 3-minute pitch and made it to the finals and got to get on stage. And that was my first real experience pitching. We've been involved in the startup scene for a while, but as a translation technology startup, it is, often people outside of our industry have trouble realizing that the translation and localization industry is a thing. And so it was good to be preaching to the choir, you could say. Everyone in the room got it. It is a problem that most people in our industry realize is an issue, but hadn't, until AcudocX came along, seen a solution that would work and is scalable. So that was a great opportunity, and I thank all of the organizers of LocWorld and the Big Challenge.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I do want to come back to that. Also want to come back to the whole idea of people not being aware of this as an industry, because you're relatively new to the industry as well. And you're kind of like born, you have a Loc Industry related solution that was, I think, probably born outside of the industry, and you brought it to the industry. And I want to get your observations going forward in terms of what that was like. But before we do all that, why don't you explain to our listeners, our viewers, what is AcudocX and how did it come about?
So what is AcudocX? We are a platform as a service that has a inherent community of translators within it, designed to streamline and automate the certified translation process. It started out as a problem as a freelancer. So my background is a Thai to English freelance translator. I was working as a full-time professional translator in Thailand. And then we had a coup d'etat in Thailand, and there was a big international incident where the country's largest gold mine was forcibly shut down by the junta. I was contacted by one of the world's major mega agencies to work on this project, but the deal was I had to leave the borders of Thailand. So I flew back to Australia. It was a $1 billion litigation. I flew back to Australia. While I was here, I had an opportunity to sit the final accreditation exam as a certified translator here in Australia. So I did it, and I passed. So working, every month, handling roughly about 100,000 words translation every month. Suddenly I became certified, and my name and phone number and email address was put on a public directory. So I'd be in the middle of, big translation projects, and suddenly my phone would start ringing. And the problem arose when these customers calling me have a single license or a birth certificate translation, minimum value job, $35 or so. But the amount of time that they were taking and that distraction was costing me as a provider a lot more time a lot more money than what I was charging them. But at the time, I was the only certified translator in the city. So these customers were calling me desperate, and I couldn't turn them away. And I thought, how much can this charity work stretch? I'm a full-time translation professional. I like to do things out of the kindness of my heart, but, I do have a family to feed as well. So I was discussing this with my co-founder, / investor, Stephen St. Baker, and we came up with a tech solution that allows, let's say, it gives the customers the opportunity to do a lot of the process themselves. So via this process, we designed what's called a self-service translation, where the customers would effectively fill out the fields that are required in a translation. And so when the translator gets it, 95% of the translation is complete. It's already been paid for. The jobs have already are sitting in a platform securely. They haven't come into your email. All you have to do is verify that the customer has entered the correct information, make a few edits if necessary, click a button, and the platform will stamp it and send it straight back to them. So no email. It's completely secure. You haven't had to talk to a customer, which was the biggest problem I was having as a translator. And suddenly we realized by this process, instead of one customer taking 45 minutes, we were averaging about 2 to 3 minutes per translation. And we realized, okay, we're onto something here. So then what we built on was the ability for LSPs to use this community of translators who are already on the platform. So LSPs have the option to use their own translators, and they can have a specific team working on these, or they can use the job pool, which we have on AcudocX, which many have preferred to do.
And let me stop you right there, because having worked on the LSP side in, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 different LSPs, that is a huge problem where people would call us and say, hey, I need to get my passport or my driver's license or my wedding certificate or my birth certificate, et cetera, translated because I have a trip here, I'm applying for school there, whatever the reason. And it's always an urgent case. And always we would say, we have a minimum fee of $250 or whatever it was, because we would love to help them. But like you said, just to get them into the system and start processing them, we would spend more on time and effort than the job itself would pay. And so you had this kind of paradox where when I was in Singapore, CLS, literally we would get 2 or 3 calls a week. I don't even know how they'd get our numbers, but that's the beauty of the internet. They'd call us and then some people, we'd even say that, okay, it's $250. They'd be like, fine. And some people would start screaming at us on the phone. How could you charge $250? We're like, that's exactly. But there was no other way to go.
For a license.
Yeah.
So my background as a Thai translator, to get a license in Thailand, you're literally paying about 300 baht or like $8. And here the poor Thais are coming over to Australia and paying somewhat like $60, $70, $80 for a license translation. And believe it or not, the thing is bilingual anyway. So it already has English all through the license.
But
And they're saying this is atrocious.
But you need the certified translation, right? So keep on with the LSP trend that you started to talk about before I cut you off. Go ahead.
No problem. So we have heard back from some of our, let's say, our original early adopters that by utilizing this AcudocX system, they're seeing a 99% increase in efficiency. So they don't have to devote project managers to these tasks anymore. Mm-hmm. And they're seeing a 95% increase in delivery speed. So it's faster. It's cheaper for the LSP. The translator earns more for their time, and the customer ends up paying less. And I don't know if this is a golden ratio, but we've managed to help everyone in the process, which I feel really good about.
So that's awesome. And again, I mean, a lot of LSPs just wouldn't even work with those type of jobs. It's just not worth their time and effort. So you're opening up. Nobody likes to leave money on the table, but you are providing a platform that will kind of just open up and say, hey, we can work with these people. So you came up with the idea. You talked with your potential your co-founder and investor, and you started to develop the platform. At what point did you say, we're going to roll this out and try to get? Because one, you're looking for direct customers, like, maybe there's an association and they're processing a lot of visas, for example, and maybe you can be embedded in their platform, or maybe you're going to work with LSPs. At what point did you do that? And what was the process like for you? Because you weren't in the Loc industry. Well, actually you were. You're working as a translator. You're working with a translator. Yeah. You were working with some mega agencies, but you really weren't at the the senior business level. So at what point did you decide, what, we can go for this, and how did that play out?
So at its core, AcudocX is a tool for translators, and a tool for freelancers who are similar to the situation that I was in. To be a full-time translator these days, you have to be focusing on a lot of volume and doing, high levels of work, more specialized work. So my expertise as a translator was in the life sciences, but also handling major development and, like I said, this mining case iteration. So at its core, AcudocX is a tool for freelancers. But we realized after launching that in Australia, perhaps Australia is unique, but there were, freelance certified translators might be as entrepreneurial as a certified accountant, in that they're happy for work to come to them. But for many freelance certified translators, having to pay money on Google Ads or marketing, it doesn't feel natural to them.
Right.
So we had this wonderful platform that had all this great potential. But what we needed to do was funnel work through to the translators on the platform. Now, okay, there was a situation where we thought, well, do we start acting as an LSP ourselves and like take on the big guys who are spending, millions of dollars on pay-per-click ads every year? And we realized actually that is going to lead to nowhere. We can be flooded out of the market very simply. So what we'll do is create a platform that every LSP can use at no cost as well. So talk to the local LSP here, 2M Language Services, who is a leader in Australian industry. And they also didn't want to focus on these certified personal document translations. They're into more bigger industries like mining and so on like that. So in consultation with them, we designed the LSP functionality. But then we realized, like you said, that there is the entire migration industry to talk about as well. And we started talking to local migration professionals who said, well, we're already making, let's say, $1,000 per customer. We don't need an extra $10 margin off a translation. And so the LSP function wasn't totally suitable for them. So what we did was created a separate migration agency platform on AcudocX, where that recognizes the migration professionals are already receiving their customers' documents, and currently they're sending the customers back to go find a translation and then get the translated version. This allows the migration professionals to upload the documents on the customer's behalf, and either send the customer a link to pay, or they can pay on behalf of the customer as well. So it just facilitates the ease of processing these documents and avoids multiple handling of the same documents. And the beauty for the migration professionals is once the translation is finished, the migration professional receives a notification and can directly download the translation as well. So they're not having to wait a day, a week, or whatever for the customers to get back to them with those completed translations. So it is leveraging the speed of AcudocX, but cutting out several middlemen for the migration professionals as well.
Makes a lot of sense. I think we first met at the ALC event in Portland. So when you go to these events, then I guess that your objective is to meet with LSP owners, leaders, and see if this is a market that they're interested in. And then if there is an interest there, then how do you engage with them? Is it like a white label product, or how does it work? Is it code that they just put on their website and all of a sudden they have access to the back end, or how does that work?
It's even more simple. Effectively, all they have to use is a call to action link that will tie their customer to their own version of AcudocX or their own AcudocX site. We can give them login details, and of course they'll select the languages they want to offer. They can choose to invite their own translators to join their team, or choose the extended job pool, we call it, which is utilizing the whole community of translators on AcudocX. And then effectively we can give them a template website or a landing page that they can use as inspiration. And they tie their own call to action link. When the customer clicks that, the customer will be greeted with a page on AcudocX that contains the LSP's branding. So it is a simple form of white labeling. It isn't complete white labeling, but the customer will see a unique slug, URL address. So the customer still believes that they are part of the original LSP's brand journey.
And then how does the LSP user of AcudocX, so the partner of AcudocX, how do they manage things like payments? Is that all through the AcudocX platform, or?
It's simple. They put in their Stripe details, and as soon as the job is completed, payments are distributed immediately. So there's no waiting on payments for the translator or for the LSP. As soon as that job is completed, the payments are dispersed by Stripe.
Okay, so to me, this sounds like a no-brainer. Like, I'm a mid-sized LSP owner. Let's say I'm doing, 8 to 12, 15 million a year in revenue. I get these calls all the time in my local region, because most of the companies that size are regional. And I have to, it's just, we used to handle it, but now we don't, because it's kind of a distraction. Maybe it was $50,000, $60,000 a year, and net, we didn't really make much money on it, but it's tough to say no, but it's just a hassle. So we stopped doing it. Now I can implement AcudocX, and basically people come in and I say, yeah, you just go to our website and click on this link, and it'll take you to the self-service platform and allow you to get this certified translation. Awesome. That sounds good. But let me ask you, what are the objectives or objections or concerns that you typically hear from the persona that I just described, mid-sized, small, medium-sized LSP owners or leaders?
It's sometimes a challenge to convince LSP owners who already have a system in place. Now, I think this is more concerning with here in Australia, where the certified translation, it requires a certified translator to work on, versus in the United States, I think anyone can certify a translation, which is just that statement that goes behind a translation. So here we have a very protected industry, and most of the LSPs here in Australia have, let's say, founded their roots on this kind of personal document translation, and we're trying to convince them, hey, there's a faster, better, cheaper way for you to do it. But many are invested in the customer journey, we could say, and they believe they're adding value to the customer by talking to them and giving them a personal connection. But at the end of the day, is it worth it for that immigrant customer, often in a state of despair, stressing about getting these documents translated, willing to pay anything? Is it okay to be overcharging them for the translation of a birth certificate or a license? I mean, so we're wanting to do good in the world and make things faster and cheaper and more accessible to the most vulnerable, who are immigrants to the country.
Awesome. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it seems like you said earlier, it's a win-win-win for the customer, for the certified translator, and for either you or the LSP partner that you're working with.
So with the landing page, we also offer various languages to use on. So with a landing page, they can translate it into multiple languages, have many landing pages in each language, depending on your main, let's say, customer group. Mm-hmm. So for example, we have Thai, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and French, German as well, Indonesian, Malaysian, all these various languages of the landing pages that we can use.
And which countries or which markets are you currently serving or operating out of?
Currently, we are offering 45 languages into English for the Australian market. We have our US iteration a week away from launch. Mm-hmm. It has been finished. We're just doing through the final testing now, so it'll be ready before July.
Well, what's the difference between the US iteration and the Australian iteration? Because if I'm getting a document translated, as long as it's a certified translation, what do I really care where the iteration is or where the translators are?
Well, what we're talking about is data sovereignty, and data privacy. So here in Australia, we've made sure that the documents are processed only here within Australian servers. There is at no point the data is sent anywhere else. The data is encrypted at rest and encrypted in the transport as well. So with the US iteration, what we have built is a federated system of servers. So a customer submitting a document within the US, their data stays within the US. It can be accessed by translators abroad, but at no point is it sent anywhere else outside of those US servers.
Awesome. Let me back up a little bit and just to ask you, so when did you start AcudocX?
We were the geniuses who launched an immigration translation app in November 2019. We started working on it. And if you remember, Australian lockdown and Australian border restrictions were probably the most strict in the world, and so we had nothing. We had a little trickle of residents returning, but there was no one else allowed into the country.
All those international student applications, everything just hit pause.
It gave us, let's say, 2 years of product refinement. And it was through that period that we discovered, there is a market for freelance translators to use this platform, but the big fish is getting LSPs on board. And so, through that time of product refinement, we added the LSP dashboard and so on.
Awesome. Well, and then you are relatively new to, again, you did work as a freelance translator, but in terms of the business side, you're relatively new to the quote unquote Loc industry. At least, I became aware of you, was just last year. What's your perception of the industry when you first showed up, and how have you been received? Obviously, I mean, you made it to the Process Innovation Challenge finalist, right? I mean, that's pretty good. And you are offering something that's quite a bit different. So, what's the experience been like?
I found that I've been received really well, really warmly, really welcomed by everyone who I talk to. My experience so far has been overwhelmingly good. It's exciting to be in an industry that is going through so much flux and change, and to be at the forefront of something like that with a completely new innovation has been exciting, and it's been good. Let's say after 4 years of product refinement development here as a startup, to get some confirmation that actually we've been working in the right direction. We have created something that there is a need for, and it could be, let's say, determined as an untapped market potential for some of these larger LSPs who have never wanted to look at it before. Yeah. So, the number of people moving around the world every year, if everyone needs one or two translation, the total addressable market does add up quite fast.
Yeah. Are there any barriers to rolling out AcudocX? I mean, because you mentioned that you're a week or so away from launching the US or North American iteration. Maybe, and I don't know if there's a difference between when we say US and North America, because obviously Canada has its own requirements in terms of certified translators, languages, etc. But why don't you talk a little bit about like what would the roadmap look like, and is there anything preventing you from going to, say, the UK, the EU, or any other markets around the world?
The only thing preventing us is, our own team, our own personnel team. So I announced at the PIC Challenge Process Innovation Challenge that we're starting to look for seed funding, and this seed round would help fund our expansion into other jurisdictions like that. Because each jurisdiction, there is a difference between USA and Canada, because we have to respect the data sovereignty of each country that we're working with, data privacy, data sovereignty concerns like this. So at the moment, with our skeleton team, we could say we only have less than 10 people working on AcudocX. So we have been able to design the system ready for the United States. After presenting in Dublin, we've got now interest from France, definitely from France. So I've got a call tomorrow to set up a French iteration. But each of these things will require partners that are happy to work with us and help us design for each country's own specific requirements.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing is you would probably need, because you're translating into that market's language. So then you're going to need to recruit another pool of translators, which exactly. If you got the right partner, they might even already have the translators, but they don't want to deal with connecting the project with the translator, which AcudocX platform could do that, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yes.
So that's awesome.
And the onboarding of translators which is something we haven't talked about, is quite simple. We've automated all of the onboarding process. So there is a self-service onboarding to the platform. What we do is confirm that the individual practitioner is certified, and we enter in their certification expiry date. So that is the one part that needs a human validation. Because and so once we've confirmed that, then they follow a self-service onboarding, which takes them between 15 and 20 minutes to complete.
That's awesome. So, I mean, that I'm running a software startup as well. We are post seed funding, but eventually we'll be going out for either Seed Plus or Series A funding. And, which was originally memoQ RFP, which we've now rebranded as BreezeDocs. A little self-promotion there. Sorry, guys. But, so that's an interesting thing. And I'm just curious, when you start to go for funding, are you talking to people in Australia? Are you talking to VCs on the West Coast? Are you looking for funding inside the Loc industry? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
From the onset, we're looking for strategic partners. Sure, we can talk to VCs, but we're back into that original problem of trying to convince someone that the translation localization industry actually exists.
Right.
And so it's much easier to talk to people who get it. and if we can have some strategic partners within the translation localization industry, that would be for everyone's benefit. I feel the amount we're looking for is not significant. It's not a huge round of funding, but it would be enough for us to stay abreast, stay ahead, and be able to launch into as many jurisdictions as we can.
What can you tell me in terms of well, actually, let me back up. I hope you don't, this might be a little bit of a hardball question, but, you mentioned strategic partners, and I can imagine you partnering with a, multinational LSP, for example. But then what's the incentive for that LSP to want to, because if your business model is to roll out to other LSPs, maybe, at one point they're like, no, we want to capture this. We want to be the one. But then, so there's kind of like a little bit of a conflict there. How do you manage that conversation?
Well, that's an interesting conversation to have. And it does go back to the original founding principles of AcudocX as being a free to use tool for freelancers as well. And so would the hypothetical investor stop the translators from using it for their own business cases? I don't know. I think they can look at the growth path of AcudocX and look at the potential and see what would be in their best interest and make an informed decision based on that.
Sure. What can you tell me about the growth of AcudocX in terms of whether that's jobs processed, translators on your platform, customers served, whatever the number is? But what can you tell me about where you were a year ago, where you're at now, and where you think you'll be?
Well, from a year ago till, let's say, 6 months ago, we were experiencing 30% month-to-month growth, growing very, very fast. Then I started traveling overseas, and a lot of my own local marketing efforts were kind of distracted as I was focusing on bigger things in the greater, wider world. And so we've seen it somewhat of a plateau, but growth is as let's say local LSPs and other industry people have seen my travels around the world. Somehow it brings back some legitimacy for our product. So each trip I go around the world, we get more and more people signing up to AcudocX. So I think that is also a good marketing strategy.
Take more trips.
Take more trips. A very expensive one. We have been growing fast. We see a lot more potential in the United States in particular, compared to everyone else. And the longer we stay in Australia, which represents 1.7 or 1.8% of the global industry, I think it'll cost us. The longer we stay here, the more it'll cost us. So we do really have to get abroad as soon as possible. And we could perhaps come back to Australia one day and offer more things as we've grown and developed into a better product.
Awesome. And not to give away any of your future strategic plans, but do you see the platform as it's developing being able to service additional types or provide additional types of services?
Absolutely. And what we're doing is looking at the key customers, or we could call them the end users of AcudocX, who are primarily immigrants coming into the country. And there are a lot of associated services that immigrants can use. And to an extent, what we have is a captive audience for a period that they are waiting for their document to be translated. And that proves to be a whole lot of potential. Whether it is advertising, whether it is other services. And so it does bring, just a more unique kind of value to AcudocX when you have, if documents are, the average completion speed is 5 to 15 minutes for the translators. You have a captive audience there waiting for their translation, similar to when you're waiting for your Uber ride, or you're waiting for your Uber Eats. It's the same concept. Yeah. So when you've got a pair of eyes staring at a screen, waiting for a translation to be finished in this case, or waiting for their food to be delivered or the car to come, it opens up a whole new market.
Yeah, no, that would seem Very, very interesting. I can imagine, yeah, like you said, all those different supplementary services, whether, my brain's on the language stuff right now, but I can imagine that there's a subset of your customers who may need an interpreter from time to time. They may need more, may have more complex translation requirements. But then there's even services like, are you aware of these government programs, or are you aware of maybe some schools are offering everything, whatever it could be. I don't know, but, like you said, if you have a captive audience, why not? So, you mentioned all the travel you're doing, and you're running the company. You're also, you have a family, and I know you're also quite active. I think this morning you said you were going to do a bike ride. How far did you ride?
Yeah. I am a ride leader with Ruffer, and so Ruffer. So this morning was a 50K up mountains, and so it was good fun, but you've got to stay active. And for those of us in front of a screen all day, I think cycling is a wonderful way to spend your time before getting to work.
So, and I was just going to ask you, so how do you balance that, and what's your daily routine? Because you do want to spend time with your family, and you got to run the company, and you got to get on the bike once in a while. So do you have a system or a process? Do you just make it up as you go? What do you do?
A couple of years ago, it would have been in 2018 or so, was my most successful year as a freelance translator. And I experienced burnout for the first time of my professional life. And those were the days I was handling multiple projects for multiple LSPs. And I wrote a blog post that got taken up by pros.com and, released as one of their featured articles for how to deal with burnout. And it was all about embracing this time that you have with your young children. So I have 3 kids under the age of 12, 3 daughters. Wow. So what we do, we always spend active time together. They're always out on the bikes with me, not when I'm doing training club rides like this, but on the weekends. I do prioritize the time that I spend with them for a period on my schedule every single day. In the morning and in the afternoon is time with the kids. So I might be working from 4:30 a.m. in the morning till 6 a.m., but between 6 and 7, I'm with the kids, and the same in the afternoons as well. So I think it's highly important, especially when I'm working remote most of the time. So I'm here at home. The kids are upstairs. But yeah, they'll be happy to see me when I'm finished with this meeting, and we'll do some activities together. It's school holidays at the moment, so and my wife is overseas, so I've got 3 kids by myself and trying to run 2 companies.
They must be incredibly well behaved. I haven't heard a peep out of them for this whole thing, and your wife's not there. They know that mom's not there. Dad's on the phone. I mean, I have 3 boys. There was never a lull like this. In fact, that's when it quieted down, that's when I would get nervous. I'd be like, okay, something's going on.
So you've heard about the tiger mum scenario. I think the girls have got that, and so they are very very nice kids to have around. But I was going to ask you, so my 12-year-old now is starting to want to earn money, and I thought, okay, well, I want, I can get her to do cleaning or doing gardening or whatever like that. But I thought, okay, actually we want to come up with a new Google Ads campaign. So found her a half an hour tutorial on YouTube and gave her access to our ads account and said, okay, follow this and see if you can learn how to use Google Ads. An hour and a half later, she's like, yeah, Dad, we've got a new campaign for you. And I had a look at it, and it was really good. I'm thinking, actually, I wish my dad had done this when I was 12.
No, that's awesome, man. And if any child shows an interest or aptitude in a certain direction, I think that you should just feed that. And what a tremendous experience. I mean, think about her resume. She's 12 years old and she's like an SEO specialist already, or SEM, I should say.
And she's already trying to negotiate some kind of a commission of jobs that come through that campaign. And I said, okay, maybe less than 2%. She's like, Dad, I want 8%.
Wow, man.
So I don't know what I've got myself into, but I let's say everyone in Australian workforce was shocked when they had to come let's say during the COVID years, had to return home and trying to work at home with kids and family and all this kind of stuff. But as my children, my family have all been born, grown up with me as a freelance translator at home, they have a level of respect for my office and my workspace. And so you won't see like that. I think it was the CNN interview.
Yeah, really.
the guy was talking, and the kid comes through. No, they know that I'm having a meeting, and I'll be upstairs after it's done. So I think open communication and having the kids involved as much as you can is helpful.
That's awesome, man. I like that. Well, hey, Dylan, I'm glad that we had a chance to meet originally, and that we've kept in touch. I'm super impressed with AcudocX. I mean, you're solving a problem that everybody recognizes is a problem, and nobody's able to, been up until now, identify a solution for. So, I think you're totally on the right track. I'm just excited to see what happens when you launch for the US and other countries around the world. Is there anything, is there anything else you'd like to announce? And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way, and get more information about AcudocX? What's the best way to do that?
Well, you can look at acudocs.com, and it has all of our details there. The last thing I'd like to highlight is that AcudocX was founded as a tool for certified translators. And while the USA, you don't have to be a certified, or let's say ATA certified translator to handle these kind of personal document translations, we want to keep that as our minimum point of difference within the industry. And so for the USA, we are primarily targeting the ATA members or associate members who are certified or on the path to certification for various languages as well. So that is kind of important, because I feel that with so much change in the translation industry, those practitioners who are specialized, who are certified, really need as much support as we can give them as an industry, because what we're facing already here in Australia is a huge number of, let's say, overqualified but underemployed professionals, because they're losing work, and they have master's degrees or higher with 20 years of experience, but the work is just disappearing. So if this is one source of work for the professionals, the qualified, certified professionals in this industry, I feel it would be best to help support them as much as possible.
That's really nice and makes a lot of sense. And it's great to do something that is both profitable but beneficial to others. So hats off to you and your team. And speaking of ATA, are you going to be at ATA in the fall? Possibly.
I hope so. I did submit perhaps have an opportunity to talk there. But if not, I think it would be definitely a good reason to go back to Portland.
Well, that's where it's going to be, right? So, and that's two hours down the road for me. So, hey, again, really have enjoyed watching the trajectory of AcudocX, and I think definitely you guys are onto something. Want to say thank you for coming on memoQ Talks.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, man.
Thank you for joining memoQ Talks, where we talked with industry leaders about their experiences and lessons learned to gain new insights about what works best across all areas of localization. Join us next time on memoQ Talks.